know, I just saw it now.
One suck on this, one suck. You feel that the prosecutor is right.
James Stanley, one of the founders of Cine Studio in 1970. Been here running movies since then. I'm still enjoying it just as much, so I'm still here.
The whole thing that was happening in Hartford was very akin to kind of a LA syndrome. The rapid suburbanization of the Hartford surrounding area. When G. Fox opened a branch at West Farms, I remember when West Farms was built, the skeleton of G. Fox was there. I remember driving by there on 84, and I said, this is the end of downtown. I just sort of, had this feeling about it. It just seemed that way. That applied to theaters and everything. So people began to see Hartford in a different way. And because of the political makeup of the area, a lot of the people who lived in the close-in areas who would come to things in the city weren't there anymore. They'd moved out. When we started out, that process hadn't really accelerated. It came in waves. I mean, there was a series in the early 60s, the late 50s, early 60s, and then what was endangered around the time we started up was the art houses, really. The art houses were starting to have trouble. One, by the way, was the Rivoli on Park Street, which was also an art house. Beautiful art house, I might add. I mean, it's a good use that it has now, a beautiful, sort of, it's a neighborhood center and school and stuff, but the truth is that that was a beautiful theater and should have been spared. Cinerama is an interesting case because the theater was modified for Cinerama. It was a beautiful building originally. They modified it relatively carefully for Cinerama, and what that means is they rebuilt the theater, they put in a deep curve 150-degree screen, they put in a new projection booth on the ground floor, because you can't project Cinerama from any tilt, it has to be straight on. It was very successful while it was going. Fiddler on the Roof played for years. 2001 played there. It was a destination. People came from all over the state. Cinerama failed to really transition to being able to play the story films, the feature films. Sadly, very quickly, their big thing for about a year and a half was chopsocky films. They were showing kung fu films all the time. It just didn't work out. When we were first starting out in the 70s, one of the things that was happening that was making people very worried was that companies like United Artists were being bought by, like Transamerica, an insurance company, and Paramount was being bought by Gulf and Western. You had investors realizing that the back catalog of films had value. The movies tend to be safer things that are aimed, say, at a particular market. They want it to be much more of a sort of, mass market thing. They don't want anything really troublesome, but they want to create the impression that there is. It's a curious sort of convoluted deception, I think, in a way. They started flailing, really, and trying to show things that weren't really... The problem is consistency, that if you are trying to be an art house, it takes about probably 2 years to get the audience to really trust you that you're really going to do it. And if you come in the middle of your art house run, say with Freebie and the Bean, people either think, hey, is this some sort of art film I shouldn't be missing? Or otherwise they think that you've sold out and you've got to sort of start all over again. It's very hard to do that. So many of the commercial operators, they're not willing to take a 2-year period to sort of generate the business. You have to really gain people's confidence. Take your time, build up the audience, get the word of mouth going. But that's the toughest thing now, is having time to do that. Places like the Athenaeum and Real Artways can show films that would just be totally uneconomic. We do have to watch the bottom line, I think, a little more, and so we tend to be sort of more in the middle. Like, we'll show some premieres, we show a lot of revivals when, the films that play the Film Forum in New York City, Bruce Goldstein's revivals through Rialto Pictures, classics coming from the classic libraries. And we also show the better of the mainstream films because that also brings in an audience. The secret for us is constantly changing the audience because people don't come to the movies twice a week anymore. and they just don't do it. So you've got to be constantly answering different audiences.
Because there were few sexual advances for you.